Among the most critical topics in international finance nowadays remains undoubtedly the sovereign debt restructuration. So, as an example, in order to understand it better, it's very important to define the challenges by holdout creditor, which are usually systemic and sovereign risks. The main characteristic, if we analyze that from a US point of view, it will be the rise in litigation over sovereign debt contracts, which creates an increase in terms of number of lawsuits and volume in terms of US dollars. So very important here to mention the Vulture Fund's victory also over Argentina that has been brought an exorbitant returns to holdouts because it has been characterized by an intercreditor inequity that had negative implication for sovereign lending and borrowing markets. Just for remembering the decision that has been taken by the U.S. Court of Appeal for the Second Circuit on August 23, 2013, affirming an injunction order to block Argentina's payments to restructuring bond holders in its justification defining Argentina as a uniquely recalcitrant debtor. Nevertheless, countries borrowing dollars therefore are looking still for investors to be attracted, and today 66 countries have outstanding debt, $800 billion of market capitalization. But when we say, when we see this case by case, I will get back to it in a minute, but the hedge funds are interested in buying basically defaulted debt. That's the main characteristic. Speak about, for example, the situation in some countries. I will invoke the Vatican, that it believes internal governance on a true development that is possible with common goods based on competencies and ethics. The debt, according to the Pope, is something that could be manageable internationally in order to help a poorer nation and to work on social injustices. He's also making an appeal on focusing on ethical principles, that the debt must be repaid while facing unauthorized use of funds, for instance. The fundamental of solidarity and the right to succeed and develop are very important pillars for the economy of the state of the Vatican. So there is also situations of need and responsibility and recognition and co-responsibility that has to be defined. The reform of the financial system is a must nowadays in the economy according to the Vatican. If we get back to an international context, we have to state that there is a conflict between the contract and the incapacity of countries, nevertheless, to honor a debt, according to several other states that have been involved in this situation of financial debt. The case of Venezuela, for example, that have a lot of concession in the New World Order economy. So there is a problem of addressing structural needs timely when the incentive of any given government does not recognize the size of the problem, its magnitude. The importance of the SDGs today within the UN Agenda 2030 and also the NDCs within the COP 22 next to the COP 23 in Bonn is present within this context of action of the sovereign debt. The second way to also analyze this topic is to speak about the national and international measures and the lessons learned. I want to come back to the example of Belgium. The Belgian public money has been earmarked within the law of September 12, 2015 that was related to the fight versus the activities of vulture funds. For example, if pensions get an legitimate advantage able to recover the price being paid on the secondary market, but not the nominal value of the debt, that will push to interest and fines. From another perspective, the Belgian legal proceeding implies also to the issue of sovereign debt by reducing incentives for holdout creditors, regulating versus the vulture funds business model, and reducing also the statutory penalty interest rates. an international debt restructuring mechanism and the legal framework is very plausible according to the Belgian government, given the national effort in terms of restructuring that they have done. At the level of the international sphere, I would state the fact that the UNCTAD have been speaking about a need of a better control of the activities. There are sovereign states and private markets participants. There is the topic of bankruptcy procedures, the one of investor funds that are interested in equity, and also the fact that there is an international bankruptcy legislation as a topic that has to be talked about. In the context of sovereign debt, we look at a strategy of profits, relationships. All these are important factors between the financial creditors. So how to deal with the situation? Stress on assessments, impact on uncertainty, tools, international support for legislation regarding bankruptcy, guide for principles for an international law that may be accepted. In example, corporate governance laws on the behalf of efficiency and that will be reasonably efficient. The principle of the resolution adopted within the last frameworks in 2016, 2017 leads to a synthesis of good faith, partiality, sustainability, equitability, and transparency. How to make them advance and work. An example in terms of practical guide and analysis. What does the principle of good faith imply for the best practice guidance? All this is a very important topic for the finance, for corporate governance that goes from the international to and could be also domino effective to the local sphere. In this video, I want also to speak about another topic, my view regarding the decision of the FIFA to put groups of 3 for the 2026 World Cup, which will be the third forthcoming World Cup from now, after the one in Russia and the one in Qatar. Historically, the groups of 3 have been used in the 1930 World Cup first round in Uruguay, because the tournament was supposed to have 20 teams and there only 13 teams arrived in Uruguay. There was one group of 4 and 3 groups of 3. There was no choice for the organizers back then. Same thing 20 years later in Brazil, when there was 13 countries out of 16 that arrived to play the first World Cup after World War II, and there were 2 groups of 3 and also one group of 2 between Uruguay and Bolivia. They played only one game to qualify to the final round. It's not a good way of doing it, because, like I said, it's not an even. There is no even games for the third team participating in the same group, which means if that team plays the whole process of qualifying a 4-year span and then qualifies, its World Cup participation could last 90 to 180 minutes to wait for the next World Cup. Meanwhile, when you have a group of 4, usually there are teams that also are motivated to win a game, even if they were eliminated after the first 2 match days. Possibilities of setups are really big, and there are chances for that. Most recently in the 1982 World Cup, the second group stage, there was a second group stage for the only time. No last 16, no quarterfinals. A second group stage was held in Spain, 1982, and there were 4 groups of 3, and the winner qualifies to the semi-final. And among the teams that qualified was West Germany, that had tied with England the first game 0-0, then beat Spain 2-1, and the last game was Spain versus England of the group, so the Germans were watching the game. And that happened only few days after they qualified with Austria, 1 day after Algeria was no longer having power in the group, and that's what has changed the rule of the groups of four third match day, having everybody playing at the same time ever since 1986 World Cup. But other incident happened because there was possibility to learn about the scores, which happened to Morocco in 1998 while playing Scotland, and at the same time Brazil playing against Norway. Those things could happen in groups of four indeed, but it's clearer that it's even more odd for it not to happen when you have a group of three. To get back to that case of West Germany in 1982, England played Spain and they tied 0-0, and Kevin Keegan, who was 2 times Ballon d'Or prior to that World Cup, 78 and 79, had 2 headers. England could have led by 2-0, for example. But it didn't happen with Germany after all the hard time, calculative first round, second round, and of course the semi-final of hell that was played against France. They made it to the silver medal during vice world champion during that World Cup by losing to Italy 3-1 at the end. But yes, I mean, completely against this this decision, and it's very, very discouraging for the teams, smaller associations, smaller confederations, to dream to have a great result at a tournament that is supposed to be the greatest showcase of sport and for the beautiful game.